The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for such a sweet introduction. Um, I'm excited tonight because I get to introduce Mr. Thomas Cox. I am honored to be able to call him a friend, and I'm excited to be able to share 1% of what I've learned from him over the years with everybody here tonight. Thomas is a leadership coach and a creator of the Becoming a Best Boss system. Early in his career, he worked with big names like Oracle and IBM, but he realized something important. Being great at your job is not the same as being a great leader. This realization led him to spend over 20 years studying what it takes to build strong, high performing teams. What makes Thomas stand out is how practical his advice is. He focuses on everyday challenges like managing time, staying on top of tasks, and working well with others, and shows how those skills can build trust and improve relationships. Trust is a cornerstone of any successful team, whether you're working with colleagues, parents, or children. So, everybody, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Thomas Cox.
Woohoo. Thank you very much. Thank you, Janine. I've known Janine. We've worked with Janine for, I don't know, it's embarrassing how long it's been, over a decade. And she has been a tremendously reliable partner and assistant to me over these years. Uh, and so when she said, "Hey, would you be willing to talk?" I said, "As many times as you like on any topic that I'm good at." Because I want to support her and those people who are important to her. So let's talk about my Becoming a Best Boss system is about being a really terrific boss and leader for other people. And to do that, you have to go through several stages. One is you got to show up on time and prepared, organized. You have to be able to manage expectations really well. Uh, then you've got to, develop empathy, the ability to be a good teammate. Then you have to be able to build team morale. And then the fourth area is you have to be able to really demand excellence and drive performance. And those are the four areas. So what you're seeing here is a summary of my level one. Show up on time, prepared, and able to manage expectations. And I will happily do a deep dive into anything you see on screen. So I said becoming trustworthy because getting tasks done and managing your time in a vacuum isn't very exciting or interesting. But to do it in a way that builds trust and helps you build relationships and build your reputation and improve your career and the arc of your life, I think is interesting. So we'll talk about how and why we trust, what it is about task and time management that builds trust. I'll give you some guidance and specific techniques that I teach and use on how to manage tasks and be organized, how to manage time and therefore priorities. Fourth is how to manage expectations. Now, this is a deep dive. I have a 4-hour class on this. So you're going to get just an overview of some of the depth of expectation management. And then we'll loop back and look at what we just learned about how these elements can help you build trust by others in you and build your own trust and confidence in yourself. Here we go. So humans trust others and even trust ourselves when we see the demonstration of three major areas. Number one is competence. If someone said, "Hey, I'll walk your dog," and they don't seem to know which end of the dog the leash attaches to, you're not going to trust them with your dog because they're not demonstrating competence there. Or they could be a great dog walker, but they say, "Hey, let me invest your retirement portfolio." And you're like, "Yeah, I trust you with my dog." All right. So competence is domain specific and it's demonstrated. It's also, by the way, I'll give you some techniques on how to demonstrate. Uh, we also assess each other on our reliability. Specifically, do our words and our actions match up? So if a person is a domain expert, they have high competence, but we don't seem to be able to take them at their word or they make promises they don't keep. It's not that they don't know the material, it's they don't seem to be able to, show up on time and prepared. Don't trust them as much. Thirdly, we want to see into their heart. We want to know what moves them and motivates them. We want to see demonstrations of their generosity. We want them to put us first, at least a little bit, not all the time. We don't want them to be martyrs to us, but we want them to put our interests ahead of their own, at least occasionally, through acts of generosity. And so if you're trying to be trusted, you want to make sure you're looking for opportunities to demonstrate your competence, demonstrate your reliability, display openness and vulnerability appropriately, and so show some generosity, but not too much. Okay. I have a diagram I use for this. Feel free, we'll get you a copy of the slides if you're really interested. And you'll see there are three pillars of trust. The research on this goes back to 2007 with C. Sean Burke. It was adapted into a popular form in a book called The Trusted Executive by John Blakey. And you see competence is that blue circle, integrity is the red, and benevolence is the green. And if you lack any one, people don't trust you as much. Okay, so we're going to look at how tasks and time feed into that. Task management. If you have questions, by the way, feel free to just start hammering the chat. It'll be fine. I am more than happy to take questions as they occur to you. Task management. I'm a big believer in a couple of key practices. One is called universal capture, and that is you have one method that you always use to capture tasks that come up. They pop into your head, or somebody asks you and you say yes, whatever it is. This could be a notepad. This could be a voice memo to yourself. Maybe you text yourself. Uh, Maybe you type into a text document in your phone. I don't know what it is. You figure it out, but come up with a system. Uh, my universal capture system is Janine. I send her messages from various platforms. I'm like, this looks interesting. Make me a card, I'll say. And then she puts it into ClickUp, which is our task management tool. So in a sense, ClickUp is our universal capture, but in reality, Janine is my universal capture. I just send her stuff and she has to sort it out. Uh, but it works, right? The universal capture principle is maintained. And what this means is at any given time, you are not at risk of dropping the ball of having a task come your way and you forget to record it. Do not trust your memory. Do not trust your memory. Do not trust your memory. Universal capture. So now, once you've captured, you want to go back and do something called a mind sweep. This is documented very brilliantly by a guy named David Allen in a book called Getting Things Done. I'll just describe it to you very briefly. You uh, go to your universal capture source and you dump everything into, I prefer a spreadsheet, but it could just be a list. And as you're making the list, then let your mind wander and notice, oh, what have I not written down, but it's in my head? Oh, I got to get salt for the water softener. Oh, I have to remember to pay my landlord that fee. Oh, I have to remember to turn off the extra phone line that we're not using anymore. Like this stuff that pops into your head and you didn't capture it during universal capture. During the mind sweep, you can get it. The way to do a mind sweep is to sit quietly with no distractions, no social media, no entertainment of any kind, no music with lyrics in it, and let yourself get bored. And as you're sitting there bored, your mind will wander, and that's when these reminders will pop in, and you capture them all into this list, and you process them using the next step, which is called the natural project planning method. It's very simple. All you're going to do is look at the thing you wrote down. Let's say one of the things that popped into my head was mom, right? Just my mom. And I'm like, oh, so I write down mom because I'm capturing mind sweep, capture, capture, capture. Now I'm in the natural project planning process. I go back and I look at my list and I see mom and I'm like, well, what about her? That's it's not a task, she's a person. What's the work here? Oh, what's the desired outcome is the next question you ask yourself. What's my desired final outcome? In this case, the thing about mom is that her birthday is coming up and I want to have this really nice birthday dinner for her. So my outcome is a really nice birthday dinner for mom on her birthday. Okay. So next to mom in the next column over in the spreadsheet or off to the right on the piece of paper is I write that outcome as it would look when it was done. We have a nice dinner, something like that. So you use the language of completion. You describe it as if it were done. So you can visualize happy completion, successful completion. Then the next thing you write is, okay, if I were doing nothing but this, just working on the dinner, what is the next step that needs to happen? Oh, we haven't picked a restaurant. How do I do that? I got to call my sister. Okay. Immediate next step, I got to call my sister up and ask her. Now it's midnight when I'm doing the sweep. I'm not going to call her, but it's okay. I just write down my next step. And you only need to write down one next step for good task management. Because if you write down like, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and you start to like list out all the tasks the way they might unfold, as soon as there's a hiccup and that it doesn't go the way you imagined, you've written this long list of tasks that's now obsolete. You've created things that you don't need. And then what do you go back and change the list of tasks? You're making work for yourself. It's nonsense. All you have to do is write the immediate next step. You're done. Your brain will relax because it knows what to do next. And now all you have to do when it's ready, when it's time to do the work, is you skim down the list of next steps and see which next step is appropriate to take right now. And then I call my sister, we have a conversation. I scratch out call sister and I put in the next step after that. Make reservations, perhaps. Or maybe we invite people and get a head count, and then we can make the reservation for the right number of people. You see, all you got to do for most things, you only need to plan one step ahead. If you do just these things I'm describing, you will be ahead of the vast majority of people, the vast majority. And if you'd like to use a system like a bullet journal, bullet journaling is free. You can find plenty of YouTube videos that'll walk you through the process. It is a well-documented method for tracking and managing tasks over time in a paper notebook. Uh, and it can be one of these wildly inexpensive spiral notebooks you can get, 10 for $1 or something at back to school sales. And it's a fine system. It may not be right for you, but that's okay. If you have no system, you need a system. And then if it's not working perfectly for you, then you can tweak the system and make it your own. But always start. My advice is always go to something that's well documented, that's better than the nothing you've got now. And then you can elaborate on it. Don't go for perfect, go for good enough. You'll notice there's a minimalism in everything I'm saying. Just one step into the future, maybe try bullet journaling. We're looking for something that's simple and easy to do. Because if your task management system is huge and grandiose, it's going to be burdensome and it's going to crush you. Questions or comments on this before I move on? Does this feel like it's doable? Are you beginning to see what it might look like? If we had more time, I would actually like put up examples of mind sweeps and so on, but hopefully you can follow just the verbal description. All right, dead silence. I'm going to assume you're doing okay. If you're not, it's your own darn fault. I'm moving forward. Time management. Let's talk about that. When we say time management, most people think of deadlines. They don't always think of timelines, and I want you to think of both. So for every next step, right, for your outcomes from the mind sweep, you've got your list of projects. Each project has a next step. There's probably a deadline implied. Go ahead and write down the important deadlines, not every one of them, but just the important ones. And then on your calendar, I want you to block out chunks of time to do the work of the tasks. Far too many people have nothing on their calendar but appointments with other people or classes where they're with other people. And there's lots of white space and they don't know what to do with it. And if you put in chunks of time dedicated to certain kinds of things, you will find yourself getting a lot more done. Uh, in particular, this a technique called time boxing or the Pomodoro technique. They're not synonyms, but they're related very closely to one another. So let's say you are going to work on your task list from the prior step, where you did your task management, you identified all these projects, each one's got a next step, and then you're thinking, okay, how do I do time boxing? I would say block out 25 minutes on your calendar for phone calls. And you're going to scan that list and you'll put a little check mark or some sort of indicator, a circle next to each thing that is a phone call. And then in your phone call time, you just make those calls. Boom, boom, boom. And if you got 25 minutes worth of calls, you get them all done. If you're finished early, you can do something else or take a break. If you run out of time, you stop at 25 minutes or whatever your time box size is. In the Pomodoro technique, again, it's a very highly documented system. There's a bunch of YouTube videos that explain it, so you don't need me for that. It is a way of giving yourself time discipline to work in little spurts and then rest. And if you work in little spurts of 25, 50, whatever your personal cycle is, and then give yourself a break, you will have more stamina and you'll get more done over time. than you would if you tried to grind it out without any breaks. We need we need to sprint and rest, sprint and rest. People get more done over time that way, in my experience. One of the things that I end up talking when I coach executives, uh, one of the first things I do is I look at their calendars, and they don't have bullet chunks of time set aside for their priorities, which is why they don't work on their priorities. And they end up going to yes to every meeting. Why do they say yes to the meeting? Because someone went to their calendar and saw that they looked open and they booked a meeting. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you can't book my time of Thursday afternoon. That's already reserved. What's it reserved for? My time box. I'm working. So no one's going to come in there and steal my time away. I've already reserved it for me, for my priorities. And time management is priority management. You will not get everything done by the end of this week, this day, this year. Some things will go undone. And all you can pick is, first you try to be effective to get as many things done as you can. But secondly, which things are you willing to get in trouble for not doing? If you know you can't get them all done, some of them are going to be left undone. Which things will those be? Hopefully, they are the lowest priority things. If you prioritize keeping your friends happy and social media and going out and being social and doing favors for friends, and you never get around to your writing, you never get around to your studying, you never get around to your project, your book, your self-development. By the time the year's out, none of that got moved forward, and your priorities didn't get the time and energy they deserve, and you didn't make the progress you deserve to make. So time management is where you manage your priorities. Okay, questions on time management? Objections? Have I offended anybody? Does this fly in the face of existing advice you've got? Have I utterly confused you and you need me to unconfuse you? All right, dead silence. That means I believe that silence implies consent. I move on. Let's talk about expectation management. This is where you really build trust. It also can be a place where you save a lot of time. Uh, there is a technique or a tool called the accountability loop. There's a diagram on the next page, which I'll show you in a moment. It has best practices. That there is a 4-hour class that I teach on that. I am not teaching it today. What I will give you is an ebook that summarizes all of the best practices of the accountability loop. That'll be my gift to you through Janine. When you use the accountability loop, you are learning how to proactively manage expectations. And remember that expectations is 1/3 of trust. It's the integrity part of trust. One of my strong pieces of guidance for anybody who wants to build trust with others is make sure you set clear expectations. Many of us are tempted to be vague with our expectations. I'll get to that soon. I'll I'll try and get started soon. What? But I don't care if you try or not. I don't care when you start. I want it done. Tell me when you're going to get it back to me. That's what I want to hear. But if you're afraid to make a clear promise, you'll try to be vague in your expectation setting. And now I don't trust you at all because I don't know what to expect. You want to set a clear expectation, make sure it's one you can hit. And if you're not sure whether you can hit it, then before you say yes, you want to ask questions. I'll talk about that in the next slide. And then, having set a clear expectation that you could fail, because remember the vague one, you can't fail, right? That's why we want to be vague, is to avoid failure. Oh, but wait, we didn't set an expectation that was clear. Therefore, the person can't trust us because they don't know what to expect. Oops, we're failing already. You set a clear expectation of Thursday. And then you find out on Tuesday, Thursday is not going to happen. It's going to be Friday at the earliest. When do you tell me? And the answer is as soon as you know. You proactively renegotiate the expectations. You say, hey, Mr. Cox, I know I told you Thursday. Here it is Tuesday. Some stuff has gone on. I did not properly manage my subcontractors. I apologize. It's looking like it's going to be Friday. I'm so sorry. If there's some way I can ease the impact on you, please let me know. Right? You never blame others when you're renegotiating, right? You take responsibility for that. And The act of proactively renegotiating expectations marks you as an exceptional player. People love that. They'd love it even better if you just hit Thursday, but we all know that life happens. And if you're the kind of person who proactively renegotiates, oh, they care about me. They're taking the time to communicate proactively with me. They're on top of their stuff. They knew on Tuesday that Thursday wasn't going to happen. They didn't wait till Thursday to suddenly be surprised by it and then surprise me. Wow, okay. So as the recipient of the work, I'm pretty pleased when you come to me to proactively renegotiate. And before you even say yes, learn to push back on requests. If you aren't 100% sure you can make a clear expectation, ask yourself, well, what would I need to know before I can make a clear yes? And here's the thing. Before you say yes, if someone asks you to do work, until you say yes, you have all the leverage. If I say, hey, Janine, I need you to spin up a 360 for an executive by next Tuesday. And she says, well, I'm going to need to know some things before I know if I can do that. Okay. Now, suddenly I'm very motivated to get her all that info. So she'll give me the promise I'm looking for. Right. Who's got the leverage? She does. She hasn't said yes yet. Who has to perform? I do. If she says yes, I tune out. I forget if I owe her anything, and now I'm going to wait for Tuesday and expect it to be done. But if she holds back the yes and says, well, before I can say yes, I need the name, I need the list of directs, I need to make sure which version of the 360 we're using. Uh, I need, we have a checklist for these things, you know, and I probably haven't given it to her yet. And so she's going to remind me and say, okay, I need all the stuff off the checklist. Okay, now I've got my marching orders. I'm still the one doing the work. And she is not going to be stuck with an expectation she can't meet or doesn't know if she can meet. So push back and clarify before you say yes. It's one of the most powerful things you can do. If someone gives you a hot priority and then tries to give you a new, even hotter priority, stop them and say, okay, hang on. If I do the new thing, I have to drop one of the three old things you gave me. Which one do you want me to drop? I'm thinking it should be A. Maybe you want me to drop B. Again, people love that. The people who give you work often have no idea how busy you are and what else. They don't even remember what else they've given you. So if you are on top of that and push back before you say yes, clarify before you say yes, this will mark you out as an exceptional contributor. And as I mentioned, I've got an ebook that details this in excruciating detail. Let's look at the accountability loop together. This will uh, do wonders for your ability to coordinate your work well with others in a way that builds trust and reduces frustration. So we start on the left with an asker. The asker says, hey, could you blank? Would you do the thing? That's them initiating. What are we at now? Well, now we're in the negotiate phase. And this is where the asker and the doer go back and forth and talk about, well, yeah, but you told me to go out of town that day, or I have to run payroll that week, or, whatever things that the person asking has forgotten or just doesn't know about. And as the doer, before you say yes, as long as you're in negotiate, you as the doer have leverage and make sure you use that leverage proactively and well. If this is a repeated ask, people ask this thing of you a lot, have a checklist. Walk people through it. Walk yourself through it. Gather all the info you need before you make your committed yes, and then you commit with a deadline and a timeline. Once you're in perform, after you've said yes, you're performing, you still may need to communicate with them. There's a protocol I teach called the warm ABCs on how to reach out to your asker for clarification, authorization, change orders, things like that. And when you're done with the work, you're not done because perform doesn't end with you finishing the work. Perform ends with you finishing the work and reporting it. And so during negotiate, you're going to ask them, hey, how do you want this reported? How do you want it delivered? Do you want a PDF? Do you want an Excel file? Want me to phone you up? And then during negotiate, you'll say, okay, after I deliver this, when are we going to meet for 5 minutes so we can go over it together and you can tell me how well it meets your expectations so I can do better next time? Blink, blink, blink. What? Yeah, that's what you ask. During negotiate, before you say yes, okay, blah, 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 blah. So after I deliver this and I tell you what's been delivered, when will we make the time to get back together for you to tell me, what went well and how I can do better next time? And people are not used to that question, but they love it. This is how you get better and better over time. There's your accountability loop. And by the way, this works with kids. Um, Ever since I taught it to Janine in 2016, 2017, she's been using it extensively with me and with her family and with kids. And she has better stories than I do on this. Uh, you're often the asker, they are often the doer. They are not skilled negotiators, but you can teach them what questions they should be asking. You should be saying, okay, now before you say yes, let's make sure that you and I both know that this fits into your day. Or okay, if you're saying yes to this, that means you can't play your video games, right? Until after you do this. I mean, that's how this is going to work, right? Help them understand how to work their timelines, how to do their deadlines, how to manage their stack of responsibilities. And bake in the time to talk about, hey, you gave it to me and you told me you did the work. Empty the dishwasher and tell me it's empty. And then I'll come and look and I'll admire your work and I'll tell you what was great. And then I'll remind you of maybe something you forgot so you can do an even better job next time. Janine, is there anything you can add? You'd use this with kids a lot more than I do. I mostly do this obviously with adults, and of course you'll be using it with your colleagues, your coworkers, your boss, your subordinates, uh, parents, and so on. But in terms of using it with kids, Janine, do you have a thought or an example? I'm putting you on the spot, yes.
One way that I found the accountability loop works well with the kids is having it in my head that they have to be able to know what I'm asking of them. I can't just say, hey, you need to go clean your room if we've never had a conversation about what clean looks like.
Yes. A clear understanding of what done looks like. That's part of the negotiation phase.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
keeping that in mind anytime I'm working with the grandkids and I have a request for a chore or just helping out, because it really helps me keep in mind to give them enough detail and information that they can succeed in doing it.
People love to succeed.
Whether that's making little charts, almost like a checklist of what it takes to clean your room, little doodles, I guess, for a lack of a better word, that are reminders about things. But if you keep the accountability loop in mind when you're having those conversations, they tend to work out a lot better because there's a lot less confusion between the adult and the child.
Yeah. If you're the asker and you're not getting what you want, it's probably your fault. If you're the doer and your asker is frustrated with you, it's probably your fault because there's a lot each person can do to take a lot of the responsibility for a successful experience. Okay. So let me loop back to my theme of being trusted and show you how this all fits together. Uh, you become trusted by demonstrating competence. That includes having high accountability. It includes completing the tasks that are yours to do with high quality. The quality of the questions you ask makes you stand out to people. So learning to ask good questions. So during the negotiate phase, there's certain questions you find yourself curious about or asking. Write them down. Don't be afraid to ask good quality questions of people. Things like, okay, when this is done, what will it look like such that you'd be really, really happy with it? How will you know if it's successful? What will you see and hear? And people often have to go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And it's the kind of question that makes you stand out because you're preparing yourself to really overperform for them. Good quality questions. Demonstrate reliability. That means setting, resetting, and meeting expectations. It's better to set an expectation, even if you end up having to reset it, and then clearly meeting it. And if you want to quickly demonstrate reliability, make lots of small expectations. I will be there tomorrow, Tuesday at 6 a.m. sharp. And then you're there at 5:58, right? As opposed to I'll see you in the morning. Now you could just say see you in the morning and then they don't know what to expect and then there's no completion. There's no loop to close because you never opened one. But the more specific you are, even with small expectations, and then you pointedly, without being too pompous about it, fulfill it, you start to build this aura, this reputation of someone who is precise in their words, clear in their promises, and meticulous in completing the promises. And people love to work with folks like that. Okay, demonstrating openness and generosity. You'll do that in part by sharing your inner state, talking about your feelings in a responsible way, an appropriate way, and asking empathic questions, demonstrating empathy in general throughout your interactions with people, and going the extra mile and giving a little bit extra. When you do that, you will have hit all of the criteria needed for people to just unconsciously trust you a lot. And that's the payoff, I believe, the long-term big payoff of masterful task management and masterful time management and the masterful management of expectations. And on that front, I would love to take your questions, if any.
And I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording at this point.